I am calm, steady. No bad dreams, no good dreams. Not even that recurring nightmare where I'm a YouTuber. I am focused on the essential to the exclusion of all else. I will defend this movie without resorting to hyperbole. I will discuss the deeper themes and explain that while the film may not be thrilling in the traditional sense, it is still a moving internal odyssey. Resting heart rate of 11 BPM. I don't know if that's good or bad.
What are you doing?
Oh. Nothing.
Why are you turned away from me?
I'm pretending to be Brad Pitt's character from Ad Astra.
I'm sorry, you were being Brad Pitt. Oh, how did I miss that?
I'm calm, steady.
Are you holding in a fart? Like, what are you doing?
Come on, Andrew! I'm doing a video about Ad Astra, and I'm trying to get in character for the channel.
You're doing the Ad Astra video without me?
Oh. I thought I texted you. Come back. Come back. Ad Astra is a science fiction movie about what happens when you look to the stars for answers. It would be an understatement to say that our species is in need of saving. Conflicts around the world are growing. Whether technological, sociological, political, religious, or climate-related, each problem is threatening to life on Earth and is accompanied by an array of proposed solutions. And Hollywood is obsessed with making sci-fi films that attempt to predict how some new technology, knowledge, or discovery will change the way humans live and save us from ourselves. Isaac Asimov, a father of modern science fiction, once said, "The core of science fiction, its essence, has become crucial to our salvation if we are to be saved at all." Ad Astra is a film very much about that tendency we have as humans to look to things greater than ourselves for salvation. I mean, the title itself reinforces this idea. It comes from the Latin phrase per aspera ad astra, which means through hardships to the stars. When times get hard, we look up. But Ad Astra offers us something much more profound. In the film, salvation doesn't come from science or technology or some weird alien race. Ad Astra is a science fiction movie about what happens when you look to the stars for answers and find nothing. Okay, let me back up. In the world of Ad Astra, the Earth, due to deplenishing resources, is dying. And the movie begins with the mysterious power surges emanating from space, which further threatens life on Earth. These are the problems that they need salvation from. And humanity, through Space Command, their version of NASA, they look to the stars for help. I guess you could say that they're... Space Command contacts Roy McBride, played by Brad Pitt, to search for the source of these surges because they believe his father, played by Tommy Lee Jones, is somehow responsible. His father leads a project called the Lima Project, which was created to look for extraterrestrial life. And he's in isolation on a ship orbiting Neptune. Brad Pitt's character finds his dad's ship, discovers that his dad is a complete deadbeat.
I never cared about you or your mother or any of your small ideas.
That he hasn't found any intelligent life out there, and that he murdered his entire crew because they wanted to go home. Pitt tries to reconnect with him and reason with him, but ultimately, he has to let his dad float away to die. He stops the power surges and then comes home. So what gives? What is Ad Astra trying to say to us?
The movie begins with Brad Pitt delivering a monologue for the purposes of a psychological evaluation. In it, Roy says he's
focused only on the essential to the exclusion of all else.
We then see this scene. Notice how both Roy and Liv Tyler's Eve are visible in the frame, with Eve out of focus in the background. When Roy turns to look at Eve, we are trained as viewers to expect a shift in focus. But the focus remains on Roy, even though he's looking at Eve. This is because, in a metaphorical sense, Roy isn't focused on Eve at all. He's focused only on the mission, on his job. You might also notice that Roy himself isn't in focus during the psych evaluation, as if to say he's not even connected to himself. Roy then says, "I will not rely on anyone or anything. I will not be vulnerable to mistakes." This is Roy's problem. He's an astronaut both in a literal sense and a metaphorical sense. Roy is untethered from the world. He's not connected to anyone. He's floating through life without any real connection. In the opening minutes, Ad Astra has established the core point of tension for this protagonist. Roy is in dire need of connection. Thus, Ad Astra is a movie about a man who has to leave Earth in order to find his place in it. James Gray utilizes focus again in the film's conclusion. When Roy lands on Earth, we see an out-of-focus group of men approach his spacecraft. A blurry hand enters the frame until it comes into focus. This is humanity, human connection reaching out to Roy, and Roy reaches back. During his final psychological evaluation, we witness Roy's character arc. He now says things like, "I'm unsure of the future, but I'm not concerned. I will rely on those closest to me, and I will share their burdens as they share mine. I will live and love." We now see a reversal of the opening scene between Roy and Eve. Roy is actively looking for Eve, and when we see her, she's in full focus, both for us and for Roy.
Color is one of the best tools a director can use to convey the emotional states of the characters, to visually communicate story information, to simply set an environment, or establish a look and feel for a scene. In Ad Astra, James Gray manages to use color in all of those ways, and often simultaneously. Now, space movies are known for their bold use of color. 2001: A Space Odyssey comes most notably to mind, and Gray uses this precedent to his advantage. Remember, colors themselves are part of the spectrum of visible white light. Each color represents light traveling through space at a different frequency. And the film starts with text in red, red being the first color of the rainbow. And as that red text wipes across the screen, we see a lens flare from the sun in the distance that begins as red and slowly becomes every color of the rainbow in order. Now, we'll talk about the symbolism of lens flares later, but for now, I'm struck by how simple and beautiful this technique is. The film begins with a warm yellow look as it explains Roy's past relationship with Eve. Yellow is set up from the beginning to represent loving relationships, primarily with Eve and Roy's father. Every time one of those relationships plays a key role in a scene, yellow is present, and the level of saturation reflects the importance or the status of the relationship. Mars is rich with warm colors, yellows, oranges, and reds. Mars, after all, the red planet, is named after the god of war, who is considered the father of the Roman people. And it's here that Roy will have to fight to remain on the mission, as well as fight to maintain emotional composure. The warm colors fit this emotion, but also put the viewer on high alert. The last time red was used, danger directly followed. And finally, when Roy reaches Neptune, blue takes over. His father's ship and his father are the coldest of all. And yet, when they first meet, they are inside a yellow section as they discuss working together. Remember, yellow represents their relationship. And we see them inside a yellow room with blue behind Tommy Lee Jones. But as it becomes more and more clear that Roy's father has no desire for relationship, the blue background grows as the camera gets closer to Jones. And later, blue once again takes center stage. The image inverts with the yellow of their relationship in the deep background, out of focus.
He could only see what was not there and missed what was right in front of him.
This movie has so much depth to it. But for time, here's a quick recap of other filmmaking moments I found interesting. Ad Astra shoots Brad Pitt mostly in close-ups. Now, this does a lot of things that we don't have time to cover. If you'd like to learn more about close-ups, click up here to watch our video on The Handmaid's Tale. Most of what is said there can be applied to this film as well. This shot is brilliant. I can almost hear Marlon Brando as Jor-El.
The son becomes the father becomes the son.
Earlier, I mentioned the lens flare at the beginning of the movie. There is another prominent one at the end of the film. Just after Roy lets go of his father, he looks back towards home and sees a tiny speck of light in the distance, Earth. A lens flare glides across the screen and points him to his ship. It's as if Earth is reaching out to him, guiding him back home. which underscores the whole theme of the movie perfectly. To honor the depth and complexity of this film and its message, I want to look at two ways to interpret the events. The psychological interpretation casts Roy as each of us, and Roy's father as the darkest parts of ourselves. Inherited through genes or not, we try to push these dark parts as far down as possible. We send our dark halves on a spaceship sent to the farthest reaches of the galaxy, never to be heard from again. And yet, we can't escape them that easily. Cutting ourselves off from pain also turns off our capacity for pleasure. And when we least expect it, the darkness makes its presence known in our lives. Like a cosmic flare of electronic radiation, the darkness comes out, and we end up doing things or saying things that we can never take back. And often these parts are inherited. That's why the father-son dynamic of this film hits so close to home. It makes the statement that each of us need not repeat the sins of our past or the sins of our fathers. But if we are to break this cycle, it will take a journey inward. We must crawl through underground tunnels of our psyches, risk explosions and eruptions, find compassion for our dark doppelgangers, and ultimately, let go, find peace, and come back down to earth.
This interpretation casts Roy as a more generic mankind and Roy's father as God. The film's title refers to looking to the stars in the midst of hardship. And human beings do this often with their search for God. Look, even the most convinced atheists are tempted to say a prayer or two in their most troubling times. But what happens when you reach out to God and nothing happens? Look, whether you believe in God or not, many of us have experienced what this feels like. To have a prayer go unanswered or to reach for God and not feel anything. And when we do, it's easy to see that God as being distant. It's like he's hiding out beyond Neptune. There's a famous painting of God and man reaching out to one another. And I think this film is a work of art that presents the opposing view, the view of what happens when we reach out, it feels like God is pulling his hand away. I believe that in this interpretation, the message is this:
We're all we've got.
the only thing we have for certain is each other. God could or could not be watching over us, but looking for something we can never conclusively find will make us miss what is happening all around us.
Ad Astra is a film very much about the tendency we have as humans to look to things greater than ourselves for salvation. But Ad Astra offers us something much more profound. In the film, salvation doesn't come from science or technology, some weird alien race, or even from a divine being. Salvation is found back where everything started, in the beauty of that which we already have, in the faces of the ones we love. Salvation is each other working together. You don't have to travel millions of miles to the stars in order to find answers. All you need to do is travel the distance between you and someone you love. I am steady. I slept well. I am aware of my surroundings and those in my immediate sphere. I am focused on the essential to the exclusion of all else. I will rely on those closest to me, and I will share their burdens as they share mine. I will live and love. Submit.